welcome to episode 19 of the Confused Millennial podcast. I'm Rachel, your host and the blogger behind theconfusedmillennial.com, and I am so excited for today's guest. Danielle Paige, aka Healing Paige on Instagram, that's also her website, healingpaige.com, is an amazingly gifted and connected psychic and astrologer. She really integrates looking at your astrological chart while using her intuition to go so much deeper, as you guys will hear in this episode and next week's episode. That's right, we covered so much that I decided to break it into 2 episodes, just like I did with Shaman Durek for episode 14 and 15. We cover a lot. And so before I get into everything that we're going to be covering, I want to make sure this is as easy for you guys to follow along as possible. So if this is your first introduction to astrology, we talk about things like your sun sign and your moon sign and your rising sign. So if you've never done your birth chart before, in a really quick nutshell, your sun sign is probably what you heard all your life growing up. Oh, I'm a Cancer. Oh, I'm a Leo. It's like what you look for in the horoscope. But if you haven't done your birth chart yet, I strongly encourage you to. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a second. First, let me get through explaining your moon and your rising sign. So with your moon sign, that's kind of in the simplest nutshell, your innermost self. It also indicates your mood. And your rising sign indicates what the world typically sees of you, what's projected out. So we talk a lot about my rising sign because that's usually how the world perceives you. And you guys, I want you to find those in yours, and I just wanted to kind of demystify those words right off the bat. So how to look up your birth chart. I strongly encourage that you guys do this. Well, we cover a lot about my specific chart. There's also a lot that is going to translate over to you guys for understanding your charts as well. So, number 1, if you just Google free natal chart astrology, tons of options are going to pop up. If you guys are familiar with like Astro Twins, they have an option on their website. Cafe Astrology has an option. Those are both like really easy to understand ones. Astrostyle.com again is the Astro Twins, and cafeastrology.com is the other one. The reason why I say those are really easy to understand, when you go ahead, put in your name, your exact birth time. So if you guys don't know that, pull out your birth certificate, call your mom and dad, call the hospital you were born. You're going to need your exact birth time, just like you needed for episode 12 with Jenna Zoe on human design. So if you've been delaying that, now's the time to do it, because you'll both get your astrological birth chart and you'll be able to go back and do your human design chart. But either way, you need your exact birth time and your exact birth location, so this city. And if you go to cafeastrology.com or astrostyle.com and /free-chart, those are really nice and easy to kind of understand because they give you like little paragraph explanations for each of the things. They literally break down what your rising sign is, your sun sign. The downside with those is they don't really make it easy to understand your houses. So we are going to talk in the next episode with Danielle about your houses, but they come up all throughout this episode and all throughout the next episode. So if you want to kind of understand which quadrant each house is in when you get your birth chart, it's going to kind of look like hieroglyphics. And if you want to see, she references me having a stacked 8th house a lot. And if you want to see which part of the chart is the 8th house, then I would recommend going to astro.com. And the reason for that is when you do your birth chart on astro.com, there's an innermost circle, and right around that inner circle, it actually numbers each of the different quadrants so you can see which one is your first house, second house, third house, and so on. So if you are going to go to astro.com to get a better understanding of your houses, what you're going to want to do is hover over free horoscopes, and you'll see a subheading that says drawings and calculations and an option for your natal chart, which is what you'll want to click. So if you haven't done your birth chart yet, highly recommend pausing this episode or between this week's episode and next week's episode, looking yours up. I have a feeling a lot of you guys are going to end up listening through to these episodes twice because there's just so much information and she drops in so many different little things throughout the way that I know even just listening back to this episode, I was going and looking at things in my chart, trying to understand it all. Also, if you are new to kind of astrology and things like that, we're going to talk about your nodes and we're going to talk about your Pluto transit and your houses and things like that. And right now, Danielle is not opening up one-on-one sessions. She is going to be opening that up soon, so definitely follow her on Instagram to stay tuned for that announcement. But one way I've always kind of done it until I can get in with a reading, I just Google that part of my chart. So when I first learned about nodes, I Googled South Node Aquarius or North Node Aquarius. I forget which one it is exactly. And that way you can go ahead and get a little bit of reading on it for yourself. So definitely we go through all sorts of different areas to look at in your astrological chart. So definitely highly encourage you to do your chart if you haven't already, and stay tuned to Danielle's Instagram healing page to see when she opens up one-on-ones and other ways to work with her. Right now she does her monthly full moon circles, which are really cool. They're totally remote, so anyone anywhere in the world can go ahead and sign up for that. She does retreats and has courses, so definitely connect with her there. All right, so what are we actually going to cover in this episode? So we are starting off this week's episode by jumping right into your Saturn return. It's something I've talked a lot about on this podcast at different points, and we actually have a real astrologer that breaks it down for me finally, which I'm so excited about. I can't even. We talk, first of all, exactly what the Saturn return is, how to know if you're in yours. So hint, if you did your birth chart and you saw that your Saturn is in Capricorn, you're currently in your Saturn return with me right now. So I definitely feel you on that. We talk about what Danielle's Saturn return looked like that led to radical shifts in her relationships, career, geographical location, and with herself, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how transformative this period in one's life can really be. And she also kind of myth busted a misconception I had about the Saturn return and how it actually works, as far as me always thinking that it was just this hard 3-year span happening roughly 28, 29, 30 in our lives, when in reality, it's so much more than that, as you'll hear her break down in this episode. And lastly, we really talk about how all of us, every single one of us, grows into our charts over our lifetime. So just because it actually makes a lot of sense that astrology wasn't something I necessarily related with in my younger years, it's because as I've been moving forward in life, I've really been growing into all of this, which is so beautiful. So that's going to be this week's episode. And I'm going to stay tuned. I'll give you guys a quick little snippet of next week's episode, but I'll break it down more at the end of this episode. So next week, like I mentioned, we break down what the different houses are. We talk about the high side and shadow side of every single one of the signs, what the nodes are on your chart and why they're important, and so much more, to just give you a little teaser about next week's episode. So without further ado, I am going to just bring Danielle in, because like I said, we cover so much. And I'm really excited to hop into the discussion on Saturn return. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I'm super excited. Like I just said, we are going to be talking all about astrology and especially our life paths today. I've talked a lot around Saturn returns, so I'm super excited that we're actually going to jump into Saturn return, what it means for Saturn in your chart, and some other really cool stuff. So let's have it, take it away. Like, what is the Saturn return and why should everybody care?
We're just jumping right in. Yeah. I love it. Let's get to it. So this is actually really important for your audience, especially you being the confused millennial, because this is all for millennials and as they age and get older. So Saturn return, we've all heard of it, but it's kind of confusing. What does that mean? Some people are scared of it. I first want to say there's nothing in astrology that you should be afraid of. Nothing that you or anyone else should be afraid of. It's all here to help us and guide us on our path. I know that there's a lot of stuff on the internet that would freak me out too if I didn't know. So just take a deep breath with all of that. But Saturn return. Saturn return is when the planet Saturn comes back to the natal placement in your birth chart. And at first we have to understand that everything is energy. So every planet has its own energy, has its own vibration and its own frequency. So around 28 and a half to 29 to 30, okay, it's different for everyone, but it's that time span. Saturn comes back to the natal placement. So we don't necessarily know astrology, but we feel everything. So when Saturn comes back, it's like a rite of passage where we go through this phase of saying, okay, I am moving into adulthood. So we actually think maybe like when we turn 21, we think we're becoming an adult, or maybe 25, it sounds like a good number, but we actually don't really step into our true maturity or begin to until we have go through our Saturn return. And again, that happens around 28 and a half, 29, 30. And when that happens, it's different for everyone. So this is where we have to get very specific to our birth chart. But it depends on where Saturn is sitting in your birth chart, and it takes you on the true path of your soul's plan. So what usually happens, let me explain this. Before 28, 29, 30, we're having fun, we're confused. Hey, but we're confused, which is so appropriate, right? We don't have any idea what's going on, and we're just kind of going with it. You know, sometimes people are like on track, and that's great. That's their life path. But for the most part, I would say like 95% of people before 28, 29, 30, totally confused. And even after 30, it's not like saying we have it all figured out, but we're very confused with what we're doing. And Saturn comes around and we start to feel Saturn. So let me explain the Saturn energy. We start to feel, okay, I'm feeling that I need to get very serious about things. I know I was partying. I was just in, Spain. I was just in there. I was gallivanting. I'm not speaking of me, which I was, but Greece, but I was partying and doing this. But now it's time to get serious. So we start feeling the energy of saying, okay, you had your fun, but now what are you doing with your life? Where are you going? So what happens is people start to slow down, because Saturn is really about slowing you down and saying, I need you to look at what you want to do with your life. Where are you going? What are you doing? Are you on the right track? Have you been successful? And I don't mean like in a financial way, in the successful, like, are you happy? Are you fulfilling your purpose here on earth? And most people, 90% of people, nope. Don't know what I'm doing. Had no idea. I was at this job. I was getting paid good money, but I don't know what I want to do. I wake up every morning and I don't want to go to work, right?
Yeah.
So around Saturn return, again, we start feeling, okay, what do I want from my life? What do I need to do? So this is, again, where it's different for everyone. And a lot of people get married around that age because it's like, you know what? I want to settle down. I want to start shifting. So it's a shift. Some people get divorced around that age if they were married before. Some people might be like, you know what? I married young and it was great for that time, but I'm going on a completely different path and we're not compatible anymore. So some people get divorced. Some people have babies around that age. Some people get pregnant. Some people, their career changes. They quit their job. They might move across country. They might move to another country. They might have a nervous breakdown. They might say, okay, I need to go backpack through Europe for 5 months. Everyone is different, but it's in this process that people find themselves and they come back home to who we're really here for. So did that part make sense so far?
That makes so much sense so far.
Yeah. So then let me explain, if you don't mind, about what Saturn is. So Saturn in the birth chart is so karmic. It actually talks about, this is where you promise the universe, I am going to work hard throughout my whole life. I'm not going to get out of it. And here's the thing, you can't get out of it. You can't. Like we promised, before we incarnated, we said many things. And one of them was, this is where Saturn is. This is my karma. This is my purpose. This is where I'm going to work hard. This is where the universe put on the brakes in that area and said, you know what, you need to learn from the ground up. So we're not given things on a silver platter. That's Jupiter energy. Saturn says you need to work. So it's important to note that just because we're going through, or I went through, or you're going through the Saturn return, it doesn't happen in a year and then we're done. A lot of people think, okay, I did my Saturn return, phew, I'm done. Well, no, it's a shift. It's like literally a transformation that we walk through one doorway of consciousness, and now we're open to, and now we see everything else that we didn't see before, and we're stepping into this new energy. So then we spend the rest of our lives moving into that energy, of that vibration. So it is a journey. And again, Saturn is the karma that you said, I am going to develop from the ground up. I'm going to learn. I'm going to master this. That's the key word with Saturn. It's all about mastering your journey. So it actually takes a very long time to get it to the point where you're like an ascended master. I shouldn't say that because people are going to think they're going to become an ascended master, but it's more about it takes a while for you to master these skills. But that's the journey in life. I'm still working on my Saturn. My Saturn return happened at 30. We could talk about that story. I think it would be important for people to understand my journey.
Yeah, you had a big career shift.
Oh, I had a huge career shift. Yeah. And I wasn't even planning for, but that's the thing is I'm using my Saturn energy now. And so your audience can understand, it's important to tell my age for this journey. I'm 40 now. So my Saturn return, happened 29, 30. And I'm still learning about my Saturn and I'm still learning how to use it. I'm in no way a master, but I'm becoming a master, just like you're becoming a master where your Saturn is. And it's a life journey. I'll be 100 years old and I'm maybe still in the energy of learning about my Saturn, but I'm more refined in it and mastering it. And then that's my gift to the world. So where your Saturn is, that's your gift. And it's also your karma. So it's literally part of why we incarnated. So it's amazing and epic and beautiful. And it really, if we're lost and confused, we go to look at our North Node, which we'll talk about. And we look at Saturn because Saturn is what it's all about.
Yeah.
What did we promise the universe? Why are we here?
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk for 10 years about that.
It's just so cool because obviously being the confused millennial, I have a lot of existential crises regularly. I get a lot of people that are also having existential crises regularly. And to actually, we hear about astrology, we hear about your sun sign and things like that, but to actually know where to look in your chart.
So much more than sun sign.
Right. Because I didn't resonate with astrology for such a long time because it was just like, okay, I read my horoscope and it told me something good was going to happen on this day.
Horoscopes. Oh my God. Horoscopes. So read horoscopes for fun, but don't take them seriously.
Yeah. And I was just like, I don't really understand like why people love astrology. And then I started following you and I started actually understanding all of these different little aspects of our chart. And it's so much more than our sun signs. And so, yeah, let's talk about your Saturn return and what that shift was like. Cause I think that's such a real world example of this transformation that can really happen.
Yes. And so my only disclaimer with this is because I don't want to scare people is that mine was a little intense because I am stubborn. The universe had to basically pick me up and throw me on my ass. Can I say that on here?
Yeah.
The universe had to throw me on my ass for me to even pay attention because I was just like so stubborn, set in my ways. I'm a Taurus sun. So not everyone's Saturn return is going to be that intense, okay? People, again, it's beautiful. Disclaimer, people get married, people have babies, people do freak out though because it's helping you. You need the freak out in order to figure out what you want to do, okay?
Right.
So mine was intense because I do have a pretty intense life path. Like my journey, I don't think is as normal as just like, Jane from next door. Like I wish mine was sometimes, but it's not.
Yeah.
So that being said, my background is in interior design and architecture. And I was doing that. I was living in Boston. I went to grad school in Boston, living there, enjoying it. And I was working at one of the top architecture firms in the world. So the fact that I even got a job there, that was amazing. But I would go there and I would sit there and AutoCAD. I don't know if anyone knows, but it's like a computer program where you're doing the blueprints and everything. And I'd be sitting there all day long drawing like urinals in hospitals. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to like literally shoot myself or like stab myself with the pencil. What am I doing? Like, there's only so many like tiles and urinals and, electrical outlets and things that I could look at all day long. Yeah. And I kept saying, at this point, you have to understand, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Like I thought I was always creative. So I always loved interior design and architecture. So I went to school for that. So 4.5 years grad school, now working in an architecture firm. And I come home crying every day because I'm like, it's miserable. My boyfriend who I was living with at the time, he's like, just be so grateful that you have this amazing job. People would kill for this. And I'm like, I know, but I'm not happy. I don't care. So he's like, just like suck it up. And I'm like, no, not happening, not sucking it up. Like I'm miserable, but I had no idea what I want to do. And that's the key thing that I want your audience to understand. At this point, I was 29, 30, no clue. I kept saying, I need to help people. I need to help people. But what does that mean? Okay. And this is before like Facebook. I mean, Facebook was there, but it was like my mom was my only friend, I think, on Facebook. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was nothing big. There was no like Facebook groups for this. Like Instagram wasn't even out. That's crazy to say. Instagram wasn't out yet. Like now it's like, oh, it's cool doing tarot cards, but like this wasn't happening before. So I didn't even think of anything up to be an astrologer. Like I didn't even know what astrology was at that time. or at least my conscious self didn't know. So anyways, long story short, I end up going to France with my boyfriend for my birthday. It was my 30th birthday. We go to France. I'm super excited. I have 2 weeks off of work. We're traveling around France. It's going to be great. And then we get there and he starts acting weird, and fast forward to it. He dumped me on my 30th birthday in France. So now I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Wait, what? I'm like looking around. We're at the Eiffel Tower. I'm like, wait, they're getting engaged. Wait, they're like in love, kissing. I'm like, and you're dumping me? I'm like, is this actually for real happening? And I'm like, what the hell is your problem? So I'm like, wait. Like, can you at least wait until like the end of the trip? Like, what? We have 2 weeks together. So, okay. So yeah, that was like a stupid move on his part. But the story goes that we somehow made it through the 2 weeks. I don't know how, but we did. We made it through the 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't know, you're crazy. Like, I just kept thinking it was something he was going to get over. I was totally in denial. I didn't understand. And so this is where my life shifted. And this was my journey. So this is not everyone's Saturn return, but this is my journey. I went back. I was living with him. It was his place. So I needed to move out. And I decided, you know what? I'm not happy at my job. My parents live in Los Angeles. I mean, I loved Boston, but it was too cold at that point. I was there for 7 years. I was done. So I decided that something actually spirit told me to move back to California, and I didn't know. So I was on a walk. We got into a fight at a bar, me and my ex, and I walked home. I needed some space, and I heard, you need to move back to California. So I moved back to California. I went to New York first to try to like have fun, but I was like crying every day. So that didn't really work. So anyways, but I was sleeping on couches and stuff in New York. So I had the experience. And then anyways, I go back to Los Angeles and I move in. So I'm 30 years old. Just broke up with my boyfriend of like 4 years. I don't even know how long we were together, 3 years. Everyone's getting married and I'm living at home. This is when the economy tanked. So when was that? That was like
2007, 2008.
Yeah, around then. So the economy tanked. There are absolutely no design jobs. You can't like, I have my master's. I basically was interning somewhere just so I can get in because I couldn't even find a job in my field. Everyone I knew that was architects, they were all getting fired. And I'm like, okay, so now I have no job, no career. I'm living at home. I'm crying about my ex. I'm living with my parents and my life is great. Things are really looking good, guys. I'm like, this is actually devastating. And so I have a Cancer moon, which we could talk about moon signs too. And so I was literally crying every day because I'm like, I actually don't know what just happened. Like all of a sudden my life is totally different. Okay. So, but after that, what starts happening is that slowly, I started having a spiritual awakening. And this is when everything shifted. So in hindsight, I was supposed to break up with him. We were supposed to break up. I went back and looked at my chart and saw the transits that were happening during the breakup. And everything in my chart, if I understood astrology at the time, was leaning towards a breakup. Like it was like from 5 angles of like, I'm getting ripped out from the relationship because my new life has to start. That's why astrology is so amazing. If I would have known that at the time, I wouldn't have like tried to make it work, you know? Neptune, Pisces energy, if anyone understands that. But so anyways, astrology was basically saying you're done and your new life is starting. So what happened is I started waking up and having dreams that started telling me, they were very real. So I started crying because I felt the intensity of the dreams. Like I was in another dimension. I couldn't explain it. And then I started having dreams that started telling me things that would happen during the day. And I'm like, well, that's weird. How did I know that? Okay, that's strange. So I was always intuitive, but this is taking it to another level. Like it was intuitive. And I just kind of thought that was normal. Well, it is normal, but like I didn't think anything of it. But this is now taking it to another level. And so it would be like I would see patterns in my dream, or I would have instances that would happen and then they would unfold in front of me. And I'm like, okay, something is going on here. You have to understand too, at this time, I don't actually know I'm having a spiritual awakening. This is in hindsight. So I'm thinking I'm actually going crazy. I don't know what's going on. And I'm thinking like I'm losing my mind. And then I start getting information from spirit of like, okay, you need to meditate and you need to go within. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, what? So I start listening to everything. And so I start sitting down and basically I'm getting so it's funny at the time because I was like, Spirit, how do I connect with you? How do I do this? And meanwhile, they're showing me stuff and I'm connecting with them, but I'm not even realizing I'm connecting with them. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? What do I do? And I'm like getting answers, but not even realizing it because I was so in my head.
I think that's how it happens for a lot of people.
Everyone. That's why I'm really good at helping people tap into their intuition, because it has been my journey to understand how to access psychic information, because I had no idea, but I was getting it, but I didn't even know. So I'm really good at showing people that. So I started getting they started showing me about my path and showing me my journey. And then I started seeing spirits in the middle of the night. And then I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going batshit crazy. Like, this is not normal, because I never grew up seeing spirits. And the first thing I saw was literally an ascended master from Neptune. That's the only way I could describe it. And I'm like, no, that's not real.
Yeah.
Like, that's not real. And I was so scared. I didn't sleep with my lights off for 2 weeks. Terrified, couldn't tell my family. And then I decided to tell my family. And then I was actually scared for myself. I'm like, I think I actually need help, because I think I'm going crazy. Yeah. And then I said, no, I'm not going crazy, because if I actually was losing my mind, I wouldn't have the rational mind to be like, am I actually going crazy? And I'm like, I'm not going crazy. I'm actually just psychic. And so that's actually was a turning point. And then from there, I'll save the long story. That was around 30 to 31. And then from about 31, I met someone that introduced me to astrology. And that was it. I basically started learning about astrology from that point on. I studied it all night and I never stopped. 15 hours a day studying. And basically, I was just remembering what my soul already knew. So that's the amazing part. And then I realized, wait a minute, I have to do something with astrology because it's helping me figure out myself. And I'm like, no, there's something here. And then I started figuring out, like, I'm here to help people and I'm here to use my gifts. And then it was a long journey. So we were talking earlier, and my 30s, I said I would never go back to my 30s if you paid me. That was just my personal path, but that's because I was clearing old behavioral patterns, shedding all old ego stuff. And when you're shedding ego stuff, it is hard. I mean, I was crying in bed. It's actually painful. There was a year I was like physically ill from cleansing and clearing. I couldn't get out of bed. I would like take a salt bath and then go back in bed and journal, and all my friends are out having fun and getting married, and I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here? And I'm like, I just want to be normal. And so that was my 30s, early 30s. And then I was building a business and still studying astrology and teaching myself that, then taking classes. And then here I am in a beautiful place, and now I help people understand so they're not confused anymore, because the chart is amazing and it helps you understand who you are on a soul level and what your path is in this lifetime.
So cool.
So that was a lot.
No, it was a lot, but it was great, because so up until this point, like, I had understood Saturn return as like this 3-year period that happens roughly every 30 years in somebody's life. When in reality, like, it's not like Saturn disappears from your chart. No. It's really just like, those are the periods of like great transformation. And then the between periods is when you're integrating that transformation and like really honing it, refining it, mastering it, working on it.
Absolutely. And we have so many, like, Saturn return just got popular for some reason, just like the way Mercury retrograde did. But there's so many. There's a Uranus opposition. There is the Chiron return. There is some squares that we have all throughout our life. So there are actually many moments that we go through these cycles, but Saturn return is a big one. So we have it at 29:30, and we also have it at 59:60. So we go through our second one.
Okay.
But the second one is not going to be, if we listen to the first one, so this is everyone listening right now, if you listen to your guidance and you let go and you go on the path that is laid out in front of you on your first Saturn return, your second one will be more about bringing it all together and mastering it. It won't be as hard.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's really like, unless you get the lesson, unless you choose to connect with it, choose to shed the old baggage, choose to work through it, you're going to have to go through the karma and the lesson all over again.
Absolutely. Like, if I didn't, like, I almost say that I didn't have a choice to do this career. Like, people are like, why'd you pick this? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is what my soul came here to do.
Yeah.
Like, everything else is fun. I get to, like, wear jewelry, wear cute stuff, go shopping, be like normal, watch The Bachelor, which I'm obsessed about. That's like Danielle fun, like human self Danielle, but my soul came here to do this. So I didn't have a choice. So that's where it had to completely rip out my whole old life and put in the new life. So that's where we have to listen.
Yeah.
So everyone that's around 28, 29, 30, listen to your soul, because it's actually where your true happiness is. I wouldn't be happy if I was still doing architecture.
Yeah.
I love what I do, you know?
I'm so curious. Okay, so what's the deal with my Saturn return then? Since we're on the topic.
Yeah. Okay, so we have your chart here. Okay, so you are 29 now. You just turned 29,
I just turned 29.
We just turned 29. Okay, so your Saturn is approaching. So here's the thing. Every planet moves forward, and then it retrogrades, and it goes backwards, then it moves forward. So that's why it's like a dance. It's a rhythm in the sky. And so one thing is important, and I'll say this before I talk about yours. It's not about one date happening. Like there is times when it's exact, the energy, but it's the energy, the buildup happens before this. Like this is like, I'll say this to my grave till I'm blue in the face. Like it's the energy happening before it becomes exact. That's when the dance happens. Just like when you're climbing a mountain, sure, when you get to the top, it's a beautiful view, but like you broke your leg, you lost your food, your friend's like, see ya, I'm not doing this. Like you had to go at it alone. You're like, holy shit, what do I do? The journey happened up the mountain. And when you're at the top, you're like, okay, whew, that was intense, right? I'm here and like, let me enjoy this view because I deserve it. But the journey happened before. It's the same thing. So as the energy is building, that's when the journey happening. So you're actually in your Saturn return now. It hasn't hit exact, but you're in the energy because you're feeling it. So for you, I wrote down some dates here. So around April of 2018 this year, Saturn got the closest it's going to get before it retrograded. So it was 2 degrees away, but that means let's see, January, February, March, April, you were climbing the mountain. We'll just use that analogy because it's perfect for Saturn and Capricorn. You were climbing the mountain. So things were starting to shift. You were starting to feel, and again, I'm not inside of you, so I don't know exactly what you're feeling, but I can guarantee that there was things about money because it's in your house of money, self-worth, self-esteem, your gifts, your talents. We could talk more about that in a moment. It's just starting to shift. And just like, what do I want to do? Like, where am I going? What is real? Where do I need to mature? Because Saturn rules maturity. It doesn't matter how old we are. It rules maturity. So April, it got close, and then it started retrograding. Okay, so it's retrograding right now. Let me check here. It's retrograding right now, so the energy is probably a little bit lighter. Okay, but it's going to go back. So December, the end of December and beginning of January 2019, it's going to be exact. So that means October, November, December, January. Those are going to be months of like full-fledged. You're in your Saturn return. Now, it's not. You don't have to worry. It's not anything like. You're in a very different path than I am. Okay. So, it's important for an astrologer to see what the client is doing, like where their life is, you know? So again, mine was really intense, but people's are beautiful, or people's are just like confusing. Yeah. And that's okay, because in the confusion, we find the gold. Yeah. We find who we are. We need to be confused at times so that we could understand, what do I want? What do I want to stop doing? What's important to me? And that's what Saturn says. It tells you to put on the brakes and slow down so that you can find your truth. Yeah. Okay? So for you, let me just see what it's aspecting in your chart. Okay, so it is opposing Saturn. It's opposing Venus. Okay, so for you, you have your Saturn in Capricorn, which is going to be everyone around your age is going to have it there, because since the planet is so slow moving, it stays there for everyone around your age. Okay. So to me, of course, there are lessons. So there are lessons in the sun sign, but I like to see where it is in the chart and what it's touching. But for not the sun sign, for the actual astrological sign. So for you to have a Saturn in Capricorn, one of your major lessons in this lifetime is to understand true authority, truly mastering your career, making yourself like a public image, and you will be out in the public even more so than you are, because your career angle is in Leo, and Leo is like, hey, here I am, da 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 da, let me do a little dance for you, right? So you're learning the mastery and responsibility of being an authority figure. So that's a major lesson for you to present yourself to the outside world, but in a mature and responsible, and like, I have you, like, I support you kind of way.
That's so interesting to me, because when you talk about April this year, I think that was when I launched this podcast, and I was like full steam, all about it.
Yep, there you go.
But then the weeks/months that followed, I actually almost shut down the podcast.
Because Saturn was retrograding. It was going away. So you didn't have the pressure. It's like having Saturn is like a parent on your shoulder saying, you have to eat your vegetables. You have to do this. So we're like, okay, my shit is getting in gear. I'm doing this. So it was retrograding away. So you're like, I don't know. I just don't want to do it, right? Because you weren't feeling the pressure. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, for you, around fall, like October, November, December, into January, you're going to be like full force, like busting shit out, like for your career, and you're going to be in it. So it's important for you to understand that you're in the retrograde cycle right now. So if you aren't feeling this need to push forward, don't push forward.
Okay.
Because we have to understand our own rhythm. That's what's so important. Because that's why I don't read half the stuff on like social media. It's like hustle until you're done. Like I don't read that stuff because I'm like, no, you have to see what cycle you're in. Yeah. You're going to hustle, but you're going to hustle in the fall because you're going to feel it and it's going to be meaningful to you. And you're just like, this is where I'm going.
That makes so much sense to me because literally I had decided to shut down this podcast, you guys. FYI, that was why I had taken that week off. I was going to shut down the podcast. And the day I made the decision was when Danielle actually commented on my Instagram photo. And I said, can we get together when you're in Florida? And she said yes. And I have like tears in my eyes right now because I was like, okay, I am supposed to be doing this. I was like, I don't know why I'm in this funk right now, but like I felt so like I had been working on the podcast since December and like I was so gung-ho and I was so excited about it. And then if you guys listen to like the episode with Jen and Zoe being an MG, I was like, why am I losing like my excitement for it? Am I not supposed to be following?
This is why astrology is so amazing because Saturn was moving back. And also here's two things. I could tell you exactly why you're in the funk. Well, first of all, I was just like called to send that message to you. So that was amazing. Like I don't always just say like, cause I get asked to be on a lot of podcasts and I don't have the time, but I was just like, no, I got to go on her podcast. And I was like, let's meet up when I'm in Florida. So it was divine intervention.
I literally said to my husband, one of my best friends, I was like, you guys don't even know like how much like the universe just spoke to me through her. Like I needed her to reach out today because you were one of my dream guests to have on.
Oh my God, I'm so honored.
And I was like, I don't understand. The universe is delivering my dream guest. And then when I had made that decision and then you came and I was
here, I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm like, hey, I'm coming on your podcast.
Seriously, you guys, like don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't give up. That's why it's timing. So two things. You were in a funk because one, it was moving backwards, so you didn't feel as motivated. Okay. And then the other part where you're in a funk is Saturn does that. So Saturn can actually bring on depression. And that's really important. I tell all my clients I work with, if they're under a Saturn cycle, it's very normal because it's like putting like an elephant on your shoulders and it's like, who the hell wants to do that? Yeah. And I always say Saturn is like taxes, unless you're an accountant. So sorry to all the accountants out there. First of all, if you're an accountant, please contact me because I need one. Really, I need help. But nobody wants to do their taxes unless you're an accountant. Nobody does. So it's like, you have to sit down and do it. And it's like, oh, this sucks. Okay, so Saturn does put you in a funk and it does make you depressed because in that depression, we find our light, we find our truth, we find our power, we find what's meaningful to us. So it's 100% normal to be depressed when Saturn comes around.
That makes so much sense. Oh my god.
Astrology is amazing.
It really is. And that's why I say like it is so much more than just like your sun, your rising, your moon.
It's just so much more.
It just makes so much sense. And like how nice to be like, okay, you can give yourself a little bit of room through the fall.
That's what I
like keep working.
Keep working. But if you feel like and here's the thing, who knows, your career will change and you will evolve. And maybe you won't do the podcast in another year, but maybe it's something else. Like, I don't know. That's for you to decide. Like, this is not psychic information. This is just suggesting, like, who knows what it'll be, but you have to listen to your cycles. But there was obviously something in the back of you saying not to do it, not to totally quit. And also we get signs. So just how I sent you that message and I didn't even know you, really, we have to. Here's the thing. I don't tell people to only look for signs because when I do that, when people do that, I feel like you step out of your solar plexus, your own power. But the universe, everything is a sign. Everything is an image. Everything is a program. The universe is speaking to us through people, through animals, through literally signs, through moments. So you have to pay attention to that and see the rhythm and the patterns. And like we can't ignore that, you know? So the universe uses the signs when we're not getting it ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and that's totally fine.
And I had been so straddling the fence on that decision. And I think it was like the universe saying, nope, of course, correct.
And that's where we have to pay attention. You know, at the end of the day, we have free will. That's one of the biggest things I've learned from spirit is that we have choices. I see it. They show me all the time. When sometimes I'm like, I don't know, should I do this? And like, I see very clearly now because I have a beautiful connection with spirit now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. I'm not saying I know everything, but there's a lot of stuff I do know. And I see very clearly, well, it's a choice. You could do either. It's not going to matter either way. You can do that if you want to, or you can just go directly to there. But they're giving me the options. Like constantly they're showing me the choices that I have now. And that's beautiful. And I know that with my romantic partner, I know I'm going to have a choice as well, which is like, sounds great, but like nobody wants to choose that.
Right.
So I'm like literally on The Bachelor. I'm going to be.
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
But like, so the point of this is for everyone that we have choices.
Yeah.
We have free will. But there are certain karmic things that we can't get out of, like Saturn in our chart, the North Node in our chart, and everything else. So for you, if you want me to talk more about Saturn in your chart.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you, you have Saturn in the second house, and the second house is the natural house of Taurus. So I'm a Taurus, so I know that energy very well, and it's all about material stability, financial stability, self-worth, self-esteem, going slow and steady to win the race, really like being the rock no matter what is going on around you. Like you came from a lot of Scorpio energy. So it's really about that rock. I'm just getting psychic information for you right now about something we talked about before and your journey. Yes. Okay. I was just picking up, which I'll tell you in a moment. Let me write it down. Okay. That's what happens. It just comes through.
Go for it.
Okay. So for you, it's really about, one of your lessons is to really understand and hone your gifts in this lifetime and to develop your own material security, which you will, and you do. But the other thing is the second house is really about what are your gifts, your innate gifts. Okay. And so if we actually look at the ruler of your second house, it is Jupiter, but let me see. Okay. It's in the third decan. So let me tell you this. We're going to do everything. Goes back to the sun. Okay. So you have two rulers, I'll say, of your second house, and they're both in the eighth house of magic, of mystery, of psychic. You're going to be doing like way more psychic, deep stuff, like healing. Definitely a lot of healing. Definitely like I could see you doing shaman work as well.
Yeah.
And definitely like deep stuff to transmute, help people transmute.
It's so funny you say transmute because Shaman Durek, who was on episode 14 and 15 of this podcast, he did he ran a skills test on me after that podcast, and my strongest power, if you will, is actually transmutation. And that's the one that I work with the most.
Yeah, I can see it right here.
That's so
I can see it. So you are here to do that one, not only for yourself, because everything we do is for ourselves and for other people. It's like you can see what people's purpose is by what they're doing for a living. Like I had to find my purpose, so I help people find theirs. There you go. It's that easy. So, so for you, yes, you have to help continually transmute yourself, but you have the gift of magic and magic with a K to help people transmute and move through and clear. So that is stuff that you're going to be working on in this lifetime as well and helping other people. Like you're going to be diving way more into it.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting. That's why like you're just getting started. And I mean, we're all just getting started in a way because everything changes and we keep diving in, you know?
Yeah. And I had told Danielle before this started, I had always, like as a little girl, been super into like the spiritual, the mystical.
Oh yeah. Packed eighth house.
Yeah.
Hello.
I used to, I don't know if any of you guys are millennials, you might remember the show on the Disney Channel called So Weird with Mackenzie Phillips.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay. So, but basically I used to walk around with this folder of supernatural sightings and like supernatural things. And that was literally, and had tarot cards in my backpack in elementary school. And then I had turned off so much of like all of it because
which we all do.
Yeah, we all do. I had gotten really scared from different stories my mom had told me. And, really 27, 28, I started to slowly peel that back a little bit. And it's just so cool that it ties into my Saturn.
Oh, it's, well, actually Saturn is opposing the eighth house, but I can see everything else because the, without getting too complicated, the ruler is connected to your eighth house and it is packed there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your gifts are you have many gifts, but one of them is your ability to transmute and transform people and help them find their gifts as well. Like that is one of your things. And here's the thing, we were talking before and you mentioned something that I thought was so brilliant. You said something along the lines of, I'm I'm doing that less now than I did before. And I wanted, if you don't mind me saying that, I wanted to mention, I think it's so powerful. We grow into our birth chart. So what I see is I see people's highest light. So it's very normal that I read people's chart and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, or that's not me. And then they come back years later, oh my God, I'm totally getting it now. So we evolve into it. You know, my goal is to bring people to their highest light. Like it wouldn't help them if I just told them just about their shadow energy.
Right.
I mean, I have to bring that up so we can understand it. But as we get older, we step into our energy. And so we let go of the shadow energy and step into the higher octave of the energy. And there's so many combinations for everything. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that. It popped in my head.
No, it makes so much sense. Yeah, we were talking earlier because I am Scorpio rising and have Scorpio in some other places in my chart. And I used to be, I mean, I still am at times, but I used to be extremely reactionary, like spit venom, cut you. Like,
oh yeah, like if you hurt me, I will cut you back.
I was. Yeah. I mean, there was just
Scorpio.
No room for anyone like fucking up from what I believed that should be expected of them. And then as I've gotten older, I still can definitely hit 0 to 1,000 in under a millisecond at times.
But you know that about yourself now. That's the difference.
Yeah, I know that about myself. And in those situations, I try to remove myself from it, and I ride out the wave of emotion and then approach it from a more logical and rational place, and I've become much less reactionary to things like okay, well, that's everyone's on their own path, whatever. And it's just certain things that trigger me still get caught up with that. So so just because you guys were one way at some point, just because you have these 100%. Different signs, those are all going to change for you as you keep growing, which is so cool.
Your signs don't change, because I know people are going to be like, wait, does my sign change? So their signs don't change, but you grow out of the shadow energy and into the higher expression of it. And the only way that just happens with life and maturity. That's the only thing. So we were saying, like, if you look at high school students, I mean, every single high school student is in their shadow energy. I don't even know how anyone even function in high school, because it's just shadow energy playing out, shadow energy everywhere. Yeah. So it's just funny now that you could see that. But
yeah, definitely. If you knew me in high school, you know I was very reactionary.
I mean, I was too. I mean, we all were, that's why it's like, oh my God. But the biggest thing is to have compassion. Like, never say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm like that. I can't believe I did that. You say, you know what? I'm learning and it's okay. And I'm going to do it this way. But to have love and compassion for yourself, because that's one thing I didn't have. I was so hard on myself my whole life. And so that's why I really teach people to love themselves, love the shadow, love the dark, love the thing that you do that's causing you trouble, love it to death and understand it, because underneath that, there's a reason why you're doing it. There's a little girl or a little boy, whoever it is, that needs love, that needs help, that wants a reaction, that's searching and searching. So if you love it, that's the only way to dissolve anything.
Beautiful. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I love that. Oh,
so love your crazy shit.
Yeah.
But don't keep doing it, but love it.
Yes, exactly. All right. So, anything else you want to add about Saturn?
Oh, I mean, there's so much, but Saturn is just very important. If you're lost, it's very important to understand where Saturn is in your chart, and then what it's touching, what it's doing, what the lessons are. I mean, it's part of your life journey.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going to pause this episode here, or we're going to stop this episode here, pause the interview until next week, because I know we just gave you guys a lot of information to digest, and I want to make sure you have time to look at your charts if you haven't already. I know this whole thing has been so amazing for me because, like I said, astrology didn't really resonate with me for so long, but working with Danielle, following her for the last year, I have such a deeper understanding of just how much information is really in our astrological charts and what makes it all so beautiful, from the gifts we have to past life karma to the different cycles we're all going to go through in our lives. And there's just so much information. And like I said, she uses her intuition and psychic gifts to go even deeper on all those things, which just blows my mind, as you'll hear, and brings tears to my eyes at different points throughout this first part of the interview, and even more in the next part of this interview, which you guys will hear on Monday next week. So to give you a deeper sneak peek as to what's going to be in that episode, we talk about the high side and shadow side of each of the signs and how to use that information in your life, including through Mercury in retrogrades, from the people that you're dealing with, and for yourself. We also talk about what the nodes are in your chart and why they're so important to your soul and your life path. we get into a little bit about mediumship and the importance of being grounded and strong if you are developing your medium gifts. We touch on Pluto transits, Chiron conjuncting the sun meaning, which again, if you've done your chart, you'll see if Chiron conjuncts your sun like it does for mine. Talk about the moon in your chart. And again, she gives us a really short breakdown of like the rough gist of each of the 12 houses. So that all can make a lot more sense for you as you look at your charts to kind of see the general themes as far as your life goes. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate the podcast, share it. If you guys share it on your Insta stories, I love that. Make sure to tag me at The Confused Millennial, tag Danielle at Healing Paige. So that way we can go ahead, see what you guys are saying, share it ourselves, and just build a deeper connection with all of you guys too. And until next week, I hope you have a great one. Thanks so much for listening.